second thing I began to realize.
Yeah.
And I began to realize it through a truth that is so profound but so simple at the same time. It's hidden in plain sight. And that is the truth that when we trust Jesus with our lives, and we make this commitment, we say yes to Jesus, and we make this commitment to follow him, he promises us that he's going to dwell in us, that he makes a home in our soul, and that he goes everywhere with us, that he will never leave us, he will never forsake us, and that he will always be with us. And it's such a profound truth, and it changes everything, but we hear it so often. And for me, when I really began to feel that on a soul level, to experience that on a soul level, I realized that Jesus doesn't stay in church. He doesn't stay where I was reading my Bible. He doesn't stay in that spiritual conversation that I had. That he goes into the mat room with me. That he goes into the weight room with me. That when I'm out on the road putting in some extra work, some extra conditioning, or when I'm watching film, or whatever else it is, anything that I do in this world, that his Spirit goes with me, that he lives with me, and that he goes into that situation with me.
Yeah, that's good. In the Old Testament, that God's presence was in the temple. But the Bible says, in the New Testament, the Bible says now that Jesus went to the cross and died for us, that we are his temple.
Yeah.
That his followers, his believers. So, to me, that's really what we're talking about here is everywhere you go, God is there because God is in you. And so it changes the way it blows up that continuum, sacred versus secular, and everything is sacred, I guess, right?
Exactly. Yeah. It all becomes spiritual.
So give us a real practical tip. For you as an athlete, there was something that you did way back then, back when it was a Pac-10, not 12.
Well,
what'd you do?
Well, let me kind of share like how it changed the way that I saw my sport, and then I'll get practical with it. Yeah. And it blew up that idea of secular, and everything became a worship service. And for me, that's what I did. I was a wrestler. I was a college athlete. So much of my time and my effort and my life went into this, so that I began to realize every time I stepped in the mat room, the weight room, whatever it may be, it was a chance to thank Jesus and worship him through the way that I lived my life, through the way that I competed, my selflessness towards my teammates, the passion that I had for the gift that he had given me, the way that I carried myself when I won or lost or whatever it was, that it was a chance to worship God through the way that I competed and the way that I carried myself. And this is true of everything we do in life, but for an athlete, this is where our time is spent. Yeah. This is what takes up the bulk of our life. So we have a chance to make everything that we do a worship service to our King.
That's awesome. And it's true, it'll go with you even when you're not an athlete so much anymore.
Not so much.
It's still the way you live your life. It's still the way you view your life in whatever you do. Yeah. So what was the thing that you did, a real practical takeaway that you did?
So my senior year, I love to read a lot, and I love history, and I came across these guys called the Desert Fathers, and they were like the original Syrian monks, and they moved out to the desert, and they came up with this concept called the arrow prayer. And the idea was that as you go through your life, and you go through your everyday life, that even them, they were a big part of a monk's life is just working and doing practical everyday stuff, and that you don't always have time to sit down and pray for a half hour or get to a place where it's completely quiet and you're able to just pray. So they came up with this concept called the arrow prayer. And the idea is it's quick and repeatable, like firing an arrow into heaven. And for me, I came up with an arrow prayer that I posted on my locker, that I memorized, and that it reminded me who I was and why I was doing what I did.
What was your prayer?
It was simply, with his power and for his glory. And it reminded me that I stepped out on that mat with my God's power, and that I did it for him, that I did it for his glory. And I would repeat it over and over as I was warming up. I'd repeat it when there was a break in a match. I would repeat it when I was struggling in practice or whatever else what it was, and it would bring me back. It would center me, I guess would be the language today. It would center me and bring me back and remind me why I was doing what I did.
That's awesome. Well, if you're watching this, athletes, maybe you're watching this with a mentor in a huddle, talk about this with some of those questions down below. Use that arrow prayer in your own life. And remember, there's really not a line between sacred and secular. If God is in you, and he is if you're a follower of Jesus, then everything that you do is a worship unto God.
Amen.